Good evening. Good evening. This is yours truly, Christina. I'm here this evening with the president and CEO of Excellence Consulting, and we're going to talk a little bit about financial responsibilities. We took a break last week because we talked about Father's Day and we talked about the relationships of fathers and their children and all of that stuff. However, we're going back to our second segment, our second series on it, and we're going to talk about credit scores and how you can raise it and how things happen. So, on the line, I have Mr. Jamal Boyd Sr., and he's going to give us some information, some tips. He's going to tell you his story about how he recovered his credit. And so you can email me and you can text me, and I'll just make sure that I get the questions over to Jamal. Is that okay, Mr. Boyd?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So Mr. Boyd, listen. I found out about you. One, I used to go to Sharon Baptist Church. The other is I saw you on Facebook Live, and you were giving us a testimony about your journey with your credit. And I was very impressed about it. A couple things kind of stood out for me. Is one is that the biblical aspect of your journey, and the other part of it is the discipline that's needed to get it done. So, could you tell us a little bit about your story, how you got to it, and then we can get through and go through some question and answers.
Sure. And you were going in and out a little bit, but I believe I heard your question about the background and a little bit of my journey. First, okay, well, I'll just continue and, okay. Well, first I'll say, to God be the glory that there is cover from bad credit, and it is by no function of my own that I was able to do it alone. It was by, much discipline and much prayer, where, I had to do a lot of damage control. And the damage was done in college, unfortunately. And, when I went to college, I was offered just about every credit card under the sun.
Yes.
And, took advantage of that because, they were giving away a T-shirt or a beach ball or, some type of incentive for signing up for these cards. And, being young and stupid and not wise, not thinking about the implications of taking a credit card and spending money that you don't have without a job to pay the bill, it started a cycle that should have been combated by education, like a Money 101 course. And unfortunately, in college, we didn't have courses like that, particularly in the Black community. And I went to an HBCU. And, wish I had the education or had somebody in my corner to tell me what to do and what not to do as it related to money and credit. But that continued to spiral as I got out of college. You bought cars and did things that, were associated with starting a new job and, just really not being disciplined, paying bills on time and, doing all of the right things. And it led to the downward spiral of bad credit and debt and expenses that your salary or your income couldn't cover. And having to dig out of that was a big challenge, but that's what really started the spiral of bad credit. And, that was part of where my journey started. But
And you know
fast
what?
forward and getting back, I'm sorry.
And you know what? I think that is, I think that happened to maybe 80%, 85% of our youth that they target when they get, and it's their first year in college where they get them. They haven't even gotten hot in their dorms before they before they give them this wonderful opportunity. But it's not just them. It's some of these older adults too that that come and want to buy cars and all that kind of stuff, and then by the time they try to buy a home, it takes them years to recover their credit. So
Yeah.
I guess you talked about college and you talked about when they start to recruit you, start recruiting you, and I call it wooing you into going into debt. So, were you 18? Were you in the first year when this happened?
Yeah, it started my freshman year, and I think I got my first card at that point. And then, in my sophomore year, I probably picked up another card. And in my junior year, I picked up some revolving charges at stores like Bloomingdale's and, places that I like to shop to buy the clothes that I like to wear, but didn't really, want to have to pay the cash for it, not realizing that the stuff that I was buying with the interest rates and not paying the month, only paying the monthly minimum was causing me to have to pay for the same stuff that I liked, twice or with interest.
Right. Now you can't find them sneakers and you still owe all the money on them. Isn't that right? Isn't that right? So, so listen, it's going to take you 4 years to pay for them sneakers with the interest rate. So when you continue to give us some information, I want you to talk a little bit about the finance charge, that 24.99% that accumulates daily, because some people think that it just accumulates. It's the same, but accumulates on a daily basis. So I want you to talk about that too, because evidently you'll never get out of debt if you don't look at that too, and transferring balances from one to another. So I'm going to let you kind of talk about it, because this is very interesting to me.
Sure. No. So, I think the first starting point, as you look to recover from bad debt, or, really looking at how to use credit in a way that benefits you versus hurts you. For me, it started with being motivated to buy a house. I had got married back in 2001 and wanted to buy our first house. Credit wasn't that great, but it was good enough to buy a house. We bought our house in Philadelphia. And, of course, because of where our credit scores were, being, in our 20s, we still had higher interest rate than we could have had if our credit was better. But again, being young and in love and, just wanting to do the right thing and just, getting into a home, we didn't get the best rate that we could have gotten had we had a little more credit discipline. But fast forward, a number of years later, we moved to Ohio, and, I had been laid off from a job for 2.5 years and not had full-time employment.
Wow.
And was not disciplined, paying bills late, and, having my car almost repossessed, and, having one of our cars actually get repossessed, did a number on our credit. So by the time we moved to Ohio, our scores were in the 500s.
Oh.
And, I was not aware that you couldn't buy a house or get a loan underwritten with a score less than 660. And, we went through a number of different processes and credit restorative programs to help us get our credit back in order, at least enough to buy a home and get approved for a loan. So the first thing I'll say is that, what's your motivation to restore your credit? Is it the fact that you want to buy something, or is it just that you want to have a reasonable credit score that's worthy of you not having to pay more for things that you want out of life than you have to?
Right.
Mine was purchasing a home. And, I thank God that he used that, because it also helped me to be more disciplined spiritually with my financial resources. And the scripture that really challenged me and my wife and others around me was Malachi 3:9-11, where, God speaks about being cursed with a curse because we robbed God in our tithes and offerings. And being able to first give God our tithe and offering and the first fruits of our increase versus, having it the other way around, saying, well, I can't give to the church, or I can't give to God or to the kingdom because I got to pay all these bills. And God challenged me.
So that's a discipline.
I'm sorry.
So that started your journey on discipline.
Yes.
Is that? Mm-hmm.
Yes. And God challenged me with the opportunity to try Him, and put Him first, and to tithe first and pay the other stuff later or second, in order to have Him open up that window of heaven and pour that blessing out. And it was a hard struggle to do that, but once I started doing that, God did do what He said that He would do according to His word. And He held back that devourer, because stuff stopped breaking down. The bill collectors started calling less, and, people would bless us, with the difference of things that, my $9.50 salary at Sats Off Fifth couldn't cover, for a family of four.
Right. Wow.
And one on the way.
Wow. Wow,
So,
Jamal.
God moved in a major way there, Christina, and that started the journey. Back when I had to shift my mindset about tithing and giving, and again, looking forward as we moved, and the motivation to buy a home came on board. That was another part of the journey that helped us start to turn things around. I would say that we also need to be transparent, because I think particularly in the Black community and for Black men, I could speak for myself, we don't want people knowing that we got bad credit. We don't want people in our business.
But they don't.
And
But listen, you don't want nobody to know it, but it's so obvious. You don't think people know it, but it's just so it is. It's still obvious. You're absolutely right. I'm sorry. I just had to say that.
No. I mean, because it was that whole concept of trying to look blessed instead of being blessed.
Yes.
And we put that facade on that we don't want people to be able to pull back the covers. But in the credit restoring process, I had to open up and tell, this person, the stranger, all of my bad business that I didn't want them to know in order to help me. And, I think as a tip, I would say, you have to be transparent, you have to be open, and you have to tell your story in order to get the help that you need to get the scores that you want. Again, I was in the 500s, and I had to share all of how I got there in order for him to put together a plan to help me recover from the damage that I had done. And
so, how long was this?
Went through.
How long was this from the time you got your first credit card to the time you had to go to restorative credit company?
So 1993 was when I got my first credit card. I think 1993 or 94 when I was in college in my freshman year. And then, again to 2000 and, well, I really didn't start the restorative process until 2013 when I moved to Ohio and was trying to buy a house.
Wow.
So, and that's a great question too, because people think you can fix this stuff overnight. And it takes years, or it takes moments to damage your credit, but years to recover.
Yes.
And, that discipline and that process that you have to go through, it can be frustrating. It makes you want to give up, because I going through, and I think I shared this on the Facebook Live, I had going back and forth with the mortgage company trying to get underwritten for a loan. And it seemed like every time I hit the milestone they told me to hit, they raised the bar.
Yes.
So, they were like, you need a 620. I got the 620. They came back with like, you need a 650. I'm like, well, wait a minute. You just told me I needed a 620. But, I had to get derogatories moved off of my credit. Mm-hmm. Inquiries dropped. I had to work with creditors to try and get them to, forgive certain things on my credit report in order for that score to go up. So it's a lot of work, Christine.
I am so sure that it is. Well, you know what? And it was a long time. And most people have that same concept. Their story is so similar to yours. And then they don't know until they get to a certain point. Well, first of all, as youth, we get these credit cards because they sound good and everything, but they don't even read the fine print. And so,
Right.
it talks about what they're going to take from you and if you're late and all this kind of stuff. And so I think that if we encourage people to kind of, before they put their name on the dotted line, to kind of read the fine print to see what it is that's going to happen. Now, when we come back, we're going to go on break. So when we come back, I want you to talk a little bit about the finance charge, the situations where you have to, where companies will forgive some things, and things like that, because I think people don't answer their telephones when they call because they think they're going to go
Yeah.
away, and they're not going away. But they will work with you on certain deals, but it stays on your credit. So I want you to talk about that when we get back. We're going to take a break right
Sure.
now. Those that want to have questions for Jamal, I need you to email me or text me or contact us on the for Primetime Power. I think it's what? PPS?
Yep, at primetimepowershow.com
PPS at primetimepowershow.com.
or Facebook or Twitter.
Or Facebook and Twitter. We'll be right back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is yours truly, Christina, and this segment is From a Woman's Perspective. We're talking to Mr. Jamal Boyd. He's all the way in Ohio. He's giving us some credit tips, gave us a little bit about his background. And so the first segment was wonderful, and I thank you so much for doing that. So now let's talk a little bit about what the steps are that that we need if we're interested in getting our credit together. We know faith is number one,
Absolutely.
but tell us some of the other steps that we need to do that. And we know that it's going to take a while, so we know we need to kind of pray for patience.
Yes, that's step two. I think faith is number one, clearly, and being able to be faith focused is essential. Second, having patience, because as long as it took you to get into credit damage or a bad credit situation, it's going to take essentially twice as long to get out in some cases. But with great discipline, which is another component, you can recover faster. And, it requires a lot of communication with your creditors, knowing how to negotiate with them, and you talked about the annual percentage rate and reading the fine print and taking the creditor's call. Be prepared for those conversations. Don't avoid them, because there's a lot that can work in your benefit when you're willing to work with your creditors and working with them to remove inquiry that helps to boost your credit score. Working with them to negotiate the percentage rates, because you can negotiate the percentage rate. Just because it says that it's 29.99% doesn't mean that that's what you have to pay. You can actually negotiate that down, and particularly when you are in a good credit situation, you can dictate, in most cases, what your credit annual percentage rate can be. Because I've done that. My score has improved from a mid 500 all the way up to 801 was the last score that I had checked. And, again, nothing but the grace of God that has allowed me to get there. But, being disciplined, being patient, working with the creditors, and also being able to negotiate the terms and conditions of your credit card. I actually had one of my credit cards that I used, and this is another part of the process, Christina. Capital One has a credit card that allows you to help improve your credit scores. And I had applied for that, and the original credit limit was $500 on that card. Over time and good payment history and paying everything on time, using that card only for things that I was spending cash for anyway, but I would buy things on the card and then immediately pay it off with the cash that I was going to spend. That helped to boost my score. It also put me in a position to improve my credit limit on that card from $500 all the way up to $10,000.
Absolutely.
those are the negotiables that we don't know about because, again, as you have more discipline and you're paying things on time, it improves your credit worthiness. So, again, I went from 500 to 1,000, 1,000 to 3,000, 3,000 to 7,000, and 7,000 to 10,000 in terms of a credit limit on a card. And that makes you, unfortunately, more worthy of other credit. But if you don't have the discipline, stay away from them cards.
Yes. And just because it's $10,000 doesn't mean that you need to spend the $10,000 or use
Absolutely
or use the credit card to get your house renovated or get your house done, and you be moved and you still paying on getting that kitchen that you got remodeled off of that credit card for someone else to live in, right?
My discipline and my motto is I only use my credit for credit worthiness.
Right.
And that means that if I don't have the cash to pay that bill off before the bill is due, I don't buy it. I don't use the card.
Yes.
So, if I need to get something remodeled or done, of course it's good to have in an emergency basis.
Sure.
We all might run into a crisis, the hot water heater breaks or the AC goes and you have to use it for that and pay it off incrementally. But if it's something that I don't need right now or can wait until I've saved up the cash to do it, I don't do it.
Good job.
And I don't put it on a credit card because, again, I'm not paying more for something than I ought to because of the percentage rate or the interest rate on the credit card. And that's the type of discipline that you have to have in order to improve your credit score. And then it's like once you get that taste of having a FICO score that's, 700 and above, it makes you want to improve that even more, because I look at those little indicators on my credit, the credit monitoring things, and it's like, keep it in the green.
Right.
And, 850 or 900 is that goal that you want. But the other tip I would say, Christina, is know your credit score. A lot of us are walking around ignorant of what our credit scores are and don't find out until we're getting ready to sit down and buy something.
You know what, Jamal? And let me tell you what else I found out by making sure that I kind of check on mine. I found out that there were some things on my credit that shouldn't have been on there. And I found out that there was a card when I was 19 years old that they never took off. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so, and the other part of it is student loans. It's very important that you make sure you either make arrangements or you have those student loans paid for, or you make arrangements with the student loan people because they're very friendly in terms of helping you pay your student loans. I think those things are really, really important, and judgments and stuff. But this is one of the things that I heard some people say, that, you know what, I'm going to get this. This costs $5,000 and I can pay. They say all I have to do is pay $25 a month. And so what they have started doing on the bill is tell you how much it'll cost in 5 years, how much you would have spent. And you're absolutely right. It's double whatever it was. So if something costs $500, you're going to pay $1,500 by the time it's paid off, if you ever get to the point where it's paid off, without getting frustrated and then decide you're not going to pay nothing because you don't see it moving.
And see, for me, that's motivation to not do certain things. If I got to pay, I'm a bargain shopper and bargain hunter, and I like deals. So, for me to see up front that it's going to cost me 3 times what I would have to pay at the time that I buy it, and it, depreciates as soon as I get it. The only Achilles heel for me is vehicles. I love cars, and it's one thing that, I can't get around because, I like to buy a nice car, and if I buy a nice car, the moment I drive it off the lot after financing it, it's worth less than, what I've committed to financially. And unless I strike it rich and be able to walk in and pay cash for it without having to do that, then, I'm stuck in that because that's something that I like. But because I have good credit, I'm now at the point where when I do go into the dealership, I'm negotiating a 0% APR or an APR of less than 3% on a vehicle. And that's something that, again, previously I was not able to do because I didn't have that discipline. I didn't have that knowledge. And I was one of those people that would be sitting in a car dealership biting my nails, wondering if they're going to come back and tell me I wasn't approved.
Right.
And, that's, my message. Don't get shocked. Know so that you can negotiate. Because when you know what your scores are, there are certain things that you're able to negotiate, and whether it's buying a home or, applying for another credit card or whatever it is that you're doing relative to purchases, you have to know your scores. And the other piece is, when you have good credit or when you know where your credit lies, and people can't take advantage of you.
Right.
And, you talked a little bit about the whole gentrification process offline. And, if somebody's trying to sell you something or give you a deal and you know that you have to use that deal to move to another place because you've sold the home that you're in due to, developers coming in, that money that they offer you may not be enough to cover what you need to go where you're going. Right. Or if you don't have the credit that's worthy to get what it is that you're trying to get, then you may be homeless with, $100,000 in your pocket.
Right.
And, who wants to be in that situation where you've now moved from home ownership to renting? And that was by force and not by choice. Mm-hmm. So, credit is power. And, particularly in the Black community, I think we need to do better. We can do better, but we have to have more conversations like this, Christina, in order to help people know. I was one who was reluctant to share my testimony, but God beat me up and said, you must share.
Yes.
And when I shared, it blessed so many people, thank God, that, I'm having conversations like this. I was invited on this show as a result of me being obedient to God and sharing my testimony. Mm-hmm. And I just pray that this continues to bless people, but again, we have to put the work in order to get the results that we want. And I'm not bragging about my score. It's just the fact that God used the motivation to buy a home to help me do better in terms of not just my credit, but just being financially responsible in order to, again, not have to be the borrower, but be the lender, as the Bible instructs us as well. And be able to be a blessing to people instead of having to beg and rob Peter to pay Paul because I'm not financially responsible.
Thank you, Jamal. I thank you so much. Our time is winding down, and we're going to go to our next segment. But I want to first say thank you very much. I've been encouraged about it. I've learned some things about it. And I believe and hope that there are others that will give their testimony and be transparent so that others will know what to do and what not to do with their credit. So I appreciate you. I thank you. I'll probably be calling you again to talk about some kind of financial or relationships because that's my thing too. So I'll call you, tell your wife I said hello. And I thank you very much for doing this with us. So next.
No, again, thank you for having us.
You're welcome.